Hi, welcome to the Mohua show. My name is Mohua Chinnappa and I am an author, entrepreneur and ex-housewife. This podcast is about everything from business to technology to arts to lifestyle, but done and spoken ईमानदारी से. Hi, in today's episode, we have the privilege of hearing from a remarkable woman, Sandhya Vaidyanathan, who's not only embraced motherhood but also discovered her identity beyond it. Despite facing the heart-wrenching challenges of miscarriages, Sandhya's journey is a testament to her unwavering spirit, creativity, and the power of resilience. Join us as we delve into her life, her experiences, and the valuable insight she has to offer, including a perspective on adoption and how it can be a beautiful way to become a mother. Welcome, Sandhya, in today's episode. So can you just share with our listeners a bit about your background and the path that led you to where you are today as an artist, a curator, and a mother?
Hi, Mohua. Thanks for having me here on this show. That was quite an overwhelming introduction of myself. Well, my journey is nothing short of an adventure. It's been a good rocking 14, 15 years of being on this adventure and so many stories to tell as we go along. I was born and brought up in Dubai, and my parents were there for about 42 years. I studied there till my schooling and then went to Pune to study architecture, and subsequently came back to Dubai, worked for a bit, and then got married in 2009 and moved to Bangalore as a very fresh, newly bright and shiny bride. And I would say I think life's challenges, or whatever it had to throw at me, started right there. We were young. I was young. I was 22, and my husband is a lot older than me. He's about 8 years older than me. So the discussion that I think every couple should have was, when do you want to start a family? Because that's the next step. The first step is to get to know each other as a couple, and the second one is, what are your plans for the future? And one of our plans were to have a large family. We wanted to have a lot of children, and both of us love the idea of a large family, because I don't come from one and he does, and I like people around me, and I love the fact that there's a house full of noise and joy. And so we tried, and I got pregnant in the first 8 months, and very unfortunately I lost that baby very early into the pregnancy. I was about 9-10 weeks pregnant, and while the story is very overwhelming, I must add that it is very important for women who are listening to this to be very aware of what's happening in their bodies and to question a lot of decisions that are made for them, right? I didn't. I just went with the flow. I went with what the doctor was telling me, and I should have read up. I should have asked a lot of questions, but I was taken into the hospital for a DNC, and this is where they take out the remnants of your pregnancy, and I was brought back home, and I was told that we should try again because I was very young and my body would heal. But after about 4-5 years of trying continuously, it just didn't work out, and went in for a test which is called an HCG, which is to basically check the health of your fallopian tubes. And a lot of women who are going through infertility treatments may understand what I'm saying, but it's supposed to be a very minimal invasive procedure. It's basically where they insert a dye into your tubes and they take X-ray films while they're doing it. It's a 15-minute procedure, in and out. But for some reason, I was put under, and I was under general anesthesia, not knowing what was happening with my body, where I was lying, who was in the room. Whatever happened, unfortunately, it happened to me. It could have been anybody else that day. And I guess doctors are human beings as well. And this error occurred where they left a piece of gauze inside me, and they didn't do a proper gauze count. This piece of gauze was discovered by me about 11 days later at home, where I put my hand in and pulled it out. And by the 11th day, it had caused so much infection. It caused something called a pelvic inflammatory disease. And this was about when I was 26, 27, and it had already started basically affecting my internal organs, the my uterus, my ovaries. What I went through post this is nothing short of a miracle. Um, in terms of the surgeries that I had to face, I went through the removal of my ovary and the removal of my fallopian tube and multiple surgeries. And eventually it came down to us having to try for a baby through IVF. And this was such an unfortunate incident because we were healthy. We were a normal, healthy couple that was very fertile. And all of a sudden, we're staring at the boards in an infertility clinic, looking at couples holding multiple babies with IVF, and said, "How did we get to this point?" And just still wrapping my head around what was happening to my body and the procedures that I had gone through, because the surgery I went through before I did IVF was just like maybe days short of me losing my life, because my ovary had become the size of my uterus and was full of blood. It was on the verge of bursting. So when the doctor pulled out the remnants of the left side of my body parts, my gynecological body parts, he had it in a bottle because they had to send it for biopsy. And he told my husband, he said, she's lucky that we were able to get all this out and it didn't burst inside and we caught it at the right time. Now, we did IVF as was suggested to us. I conceived in the first round of IVF. I was carrying twins, and this is also a very normal phenomenon during IVF. Is when you lose one unhealthy twin in the pregnancy. It's nature's way of eliminating something that's not healthy. And so this was at around 9 weeks. I lost one twin. And the doctors assured me, they said the other baby's doing perfectly fine and growing well. What they don't tell you in most IVF clinics is the chances of you not taking this pregnancy through. They don't give you the odds. They always show you very happy pictures of couples and holding a lot of babies and families, but they don't tell you that these are the things that will happen. These are the drugs you're pumping into your system. This is the kind of medication you have to take. And I feel strongly, and I've been a big advocate of this, and I've been very verbal about this, is when you go into an IVF clinic, always ask questions about how this affects my body. While they romanticize the idea of you having multiple children or confirming and giving you like probably a 98% chance of you for sure having a baby, what they don't tell you is maybe 10 years later or 12 years later, what is the effect of these drugs that you put in your system? Nobody gives you that. It's like a disclaimer. They never speak about it unless you ask about it. So when we sat our doctor down and we asked her, what is the recommended number of times that you can do IVF? And she said it's 4 as per WHO. Now, this is information that a lot of people don't know about, because they are, you have the funds and you have the finances. And today even offices provide you with insurance and to freeze your eggs and to try IVF. But there's only so much that a woman's body can take. And I tried my first round. I got pregnant. Now, this is at around 14 weeks. I went in for a scan and I was told that everything is good and everything is normal. And this can now progress as a normal pregnancy and I should now go and see my gynac. So as luck would have it, and life had other plans for me, my water broke. And this was at around 15 weeks. Water broke, rushed into emergency, admitted into Fortis. And the doctors basically told me that as your body would, when your water breaks, you will miscarry and you will go into labor. But I didn't go into labor, and somehow the water leakage stopped, and this just went on and on week after week. And I ended up spending 52 days there. And I think I remember the 52 days in the hospital. The nurses had become friends, and I would see babies being born and being, wheeled into the room. And I would see mothers walking around postpartum or feeding. And along with my IV line, I used to go into the room where they would bathe the newborns and, wrap them, and just sort of manifesting and telling my body that you need to sustain this pregnancy, giving myself those good vibes, saying, this could be me, my baby will come out, and they will be changing the baby in the room. And Mohua, this went on to a point where I had crossed my termination date, and there was no sign of my body increasing the amniotic fluid. And I think my doctor, I mean, God bless her, is very cutthroat woman who took my husband out of the room and said, you need to terminate this pregnancy because it's not going to happen. Because we can't keep pushing this any further, because as she crosses her 5th month, goes to her 6th month, while the baby is growing, there is no amniotic fluid inside for that baby to move around, which means even if we do try to save this pregnancy, you're looking at a child that has Potter syndrome, which is actually a crushed baby. And they have very funny facial features because they don't have any liquid inside to moisturize their skin, broken hands and legs. And she said, are you okay with going through another, lifetime of therapy and, doctors and hospital? And he said, no, I've gone through enough of it already. I mean, call me selfish or whatever, but I'm not going to, because what the doctor told me is, if I send her home today and she does go into labor and delivers a baby, you can't throw that baby in the dustbin. Then it becomes yours. And then you have full responsibility towards that child. And that is so important for you to understand that today I'm giving you a choice to decide what you want to do, because this baby may or may not survive. And I can tell you for sure, she will not survive if she goes into labor, because there is so much infection inside. And having said this, they did come and sit me down and counsel me, and I put my foot down and I said, no, this is not happening, because I this was a precious pregnancy. I'd worked very hard to get to this point. This was a dream, having a bump, and I had this Godh Bharai date all set out, and we had a hall booked, and to me those were things that I had my life planned. Like, I would be married and I would have these children, and I've seen my sister have her Godh Bharai and the bangles, and we're South Indian, so we do it in this very elaborate way. And this was always like this big dream inside that, and I would look at my bump in the mirror, and I had a good bump. And somehow, to me, when they said terminate, this whole thing in my head, it was, I couldn't let go of the idea of not having to have any of these things. And so very sadly, the doctor sat me down and she said, you know what, Sandhya, this is your life. And today I'm telling you, just listen to what I'm saying. You will probably get pregnant again. You may not, but your life is super important for us at this moment. We don't care about the child that you're carrying, because you feel like we're going to kill that baby, but we are very, very concerned about your health and the fact that your husband doesn't want to become a widow. Right? We want you to walk out of this hospital alive. But very reluctantly, I said no. They forced me to sign the paper. They said, no, you have to sign the paper. And the doctor said, you know what, just discharge her, take her home, because of the trauma of termination, right? After being in the hospital for 52 days, she said, if I take her into the OT right now, she probably will be scarred for life with this. Take her home, let her spend a couple of days with the family, let her calm down, have family friends over, and then bring her back another day. We will set a date. They also had to reopen the file on a new file name because I had crossed my legal termination date. And
so, Sandhya, there's one question that comes to my head and heart, because I know what it is like. I can kind of completely relate to what you're saying about looking forward to that bump and, the Godh Bharai and all of that. How did the family and friends around you react? You said it was an arranged marriage, and of course your husband is very, very supportive from all that we hear from you, but was it easy with the relatives?
So Mohua, I don't think a lot of the immediate family was able to wrap their head around what was happening, because so much was happening so fast. But I was always priority in the immediate family circle. And the unfortunate thing is, because we don't speak about this a lot in the Indian society, we don't talk about maternal health or what it's like to go through this trauma. People don't know what they're supposed to say to make you feel better, right? They want to be there for you, they want to support you, they want to hold your hand. But at the end of the day, they decide to sometimes stay back and not give that advice or give that support because they feel like it might come out the wrong way. I did have my mom with me throughout in the hospital when I was admitted, and I did have her with me in the labor room. But I think, like, when our friends came to see us when I was discharged and brought home before the termination, I had people sit down with me and try and tell me things like, it's okay, let it go, it's fine. You will get pregnant again, you can have another family, you can build your family again. This is not the end of it. But what they don't understand is, as a human being still carrying that baby, still feeling that baby move around you, it's just white noise. You don't register that because you for sure know that they don't feel what you're going through. And the most painful thing is you're sitting there numb like this doll. People are coming and trying to give you sweet and food and comfort you, and you want to acknowledge the comfort, you want to acknowledge the fact that thank you for being here for me and supporting us through this as a couple. But all you can think about is, I can see my dreams fading away, I can see somebody pulling that baby out of me, I can see the fact that I may never have that god bharai again. Uh, to me, that just, I felt like a failure, that I was not able to give my husband what he wanted. I was not able to my body had failed me. My body was not able to make that baby. And in so many ways, I just kept cursing myself for the fact that I should have questioned a lot of things. I should have made better decisions. I should have probably not gone to that doctor. But that's all spilt milk. Like, I can't reverse what happened.
Did
But
it affect your relationship with your husband? Because that must be a huge part in which, guilt, generally women are the ones who take on this entire guilt. Motherhood is such a done thing in every marriage. But of course, today society is changing and people are questioning, this entire, you have to be a mother, that it's no longer, it is, but it's not, I think it's being discussed a lot more openly. And do you think you had that same pressure, and how did it affect your relationship with him?
uh, you've touched the right chord, because I think a nothing affects a relationship as much as infertility does. And
We want to repeat this here. Sandhya says that nothing affects a relationship as much as infertility does. So, yeah, let's hear you.
it's not talked about. It's something that is kept under wraps. We see a lot of couples out there who are together, don't have children, but it is such a sensitive topic that you don't want to touch the wrong chord by asking them, hey, do you have children, or are you planning to have children? And this comes from a place where I was asked these questions repeatedly. I was asked this question 2 days after I lost my baby. I had terminated my pregnancy. This old lady comes up to me and she says, what, you want to have fun? You want to party all the time? You don't want to have a family? And I had these hot tears well up in my eyes. And my husband was like holding my hand very tightly. And he's like, don't give it back to her because she doesn't know any better. Sometimes it just comes from a place of ignorance. What we went through as a couple during the process of trying to have a baby, it's crazy. Mohua, I'm telling you, there were days when we wouldn't talk to each other. Like, weeks would go by. We would be living very separate lives because of this whole hospital environment. He had to go into a room with a cup, give his sperm, come back. It was so automated and so monotonous. And I'm being very, very raw over here when I say this, that it's pretty much like having a doctor in your bedroom controlling your sex life with your husband, right? You are not allowed to have intercourse with him because there are days when you should do it, because his sperm has to be the best quality sperm that he gives. And so they tell you, these are the days you can do it, these are the days you can't do it, these are the days that you should probably take this medicine and inject yourself with this, and then these are the multivitamins that you should have. The kind of toll that it takes on you, right? The spontaneity is basically, it's thrown out of your marriage. The fact that now you are seeing your wife as this person who's tired, depressed, angry because of the drugs she's taking. It's affecting her mental ability. It's affecting her decision-making ability. It's affecting how she is as a person normally. And I'm very boisterous and happy, and I love joking around, and I love talking, and I love singing, and I love painting. And I stopped doing all of that because this had taken over my life, like this dark energy. And it was so visible in the household. We were leading completely separate lives, and he was doing his thing, I was doing my thing. There was nothing that we were doing together, because the ultimate aim was, let's do this, let's try and get pregnant because we have to get pregnant. Don't eat pineapple because you may miscarry. Don't have papaya. Don't drink. Don't party, don't do any of these things. Basically, your life comes to a standstill because you're doing this. Nobody talks about it. It's all under wraps. You know, there is probably a friend of yours who's going through this, but nobody talks about it. And I started talking about it after this whole saga, and people were like, oh, I went through this. I said, but why didn't you tell me? Because that's when you need people. That's when you need someone to come and sit next to you and say, hey, this is not the end of the world, that I'm here for you, and let's take you out. Let's take you on a drive. Let's take you to have some masala dosa at the Darshini. Let's have a cup of coffee. You need someone to come and don't back away from me because we're going through this. Be present in our lives, because as a couple, we're not present at the moment. And so I have seen personally a lot of my friends go through divorces, and men who go and choose other women so that they can start their own families, because they feel like the woman cannot provide them with what they're looking for. And that's the saddest part. And so the message to all the men out there would be, please just bear with what your wife or your partner is going through, because she's going through the toughest journey in this whole fertility thing, because you're just giving your sperm in a cup and not being emotionally available to her, not being physically available to her. You may not be allowed to have sex, but you can hold her. You can hug her. You can be intimate with her. You can just sit there with her head on your shoulder and say, I'm here for you. Give her a back rub, because her back hurts from all the injections. And I went through it, and nobody told us this. So there was a time, Mohua, Mohua, that we actually contemplated not going through this marriage. Um, we told each other that we'll give it this one time, and then this was not working out because we were just at each other's case. We were like biting at each other, and this had taken over even our relationship with our families, because they just wouldn't understand what IVF is. And believe it or not, I have a grandmother who's 99, and she was about 95, 96 when this happened. And she actually asked for a book to read because she doesn't have access to the internet. She wanted to know what IVF was. And she read through it, and she said, oh, okay, this is what you're going through. And she would call me up and check. And at her age, she had that wisdom to be supportive to me, and, and call and say, you know what, it's going to be okay. I know you have this injection, and this is what an embryo transfer is. And it was just, for me, that kind of support coming from her, when a lot of people around us just didn't get what we were going through.
So, Sandhya, you've shared such a powerful message actually right now, about motherhood, not defining a woman's existence, and the notion that biology is just a very small part of it. So, can you expand on this perspective and its significance in your life? Because you've adopted children, right? And adoption can be a beautiful way to become a mother, because there are so many women who really struggle. And I know families, where I've walked into their homes, and that energy is so, so heavy because they've been trying to have a child forever. And so can you just share your thoughts on how adoption works and the unique joys and challenges, it presented to you as a parent when you decided to bring home, your two children?
Has to be the most beautiful chapter of my life after everything that we went through. And I think the power to have that beautiful chapter in your life lies within you. Nobody else can make that for you. Nobody else can make these decisions for you. When I came back home from the hospital, and the depression that I went through, right? Mental health, it took such a big toll on me, because I felt like I had failed. Like I told you before, that my body had failed me. I had failed my family. I had failed my husband. And the entire burden of this whole journey was on my shoulders. And that perhaps if I did not exist, if I ceased to exist, my husband would go ahead and get married and have children. And I did try to take my own life, and I'm very thankful that I have such an amazing, supportive husband who understood what I was going through at that time. And he was the one who came and told me that, why do you associate your being to becoming a mother? And why is that a connection there? I understand that you want to be a mother and you have been looking forward to it, but life has other plans for us, and probably this is not what is meant to be. And we can just be this couple that, we plan our retirement and we plan our lives in a way that we don't have children. Our nephews and nieces become our children. The family and friends we have around and their children become our children. And to me, somehow that idea just did not present itself properly, because I wanted my children, my own children. And if someone had told me, if you stand, upside down, you drink this kashaya, you drink this kada, you will get pregnant, I would have done it blindly, because I was in that stage. I had still not realized that as a woman, I have this potential, this power to change the narrative of my life, to change the stories that have presented itself to us. And that happened the day, I think, when he came to me and he sat me down and he said, you know what? And this was about adoption, and this was about applying on Kara. And for the longest time, I was very, very much for it, and he wasn't, because he had not, I think, gathered enough information about it. What he had seen when he was growing up, or the kind of adoption procedures that were taking place much before the recent times. People were going into orphanages, picking up babies and coming. There were no health checkups. There were no paperwork. There was nothing in place. There were a lot of loopholes. And when he started speaking to the right people, the people that he knew had adopted, is when he had the information to say, hey, let's do this. And I always feel like this is a two people decision, right? One person who wants to adopt and the other person who doesn't. It's a lot of pressure on them, and I think it's not correct to put that kind of pressure on them. I think what would help more is education in that regard, having them sit down with counselors, teaching them about adoption. So he sat me down and he said, I know you've been wanting this for a while, but come, let's register. And to me, that was, I think, the first time I smiled after a really long time, because you gave me a puppy, I would mother it. If you gave me a hen, I would make it my baby. I was in that situation where I just wanted some baby energy around me. Like, I wanted children. I wanted to be maternal towards something, someone. And when we applied in 2016, I remember uploading the paperwork, and I remember not telling anybody about this, because we said we didn't even tell our immediate family about this, because the decision we made was, let's not give this out at this point of time, because we don't want wrong judgment, or we don't want people to change the way we think about this. And what we did was, I think when we were nearing the numbers at around, like when we were at about 100 in the queue, that's when we called up our family and our friends and we said, hey, you know what, we've applied for adoption, and anytime now the baby would be coming home. And they said, wow, like, this is amazing news. And there were a lot of questions with it as well, right? How are you feeling about it? Have you taken counseling? Are you both on board with this decision? How is your immediate family feeling about this? And we said, call it selfish or not, we've not actually told anybody in the immediate family about this. And we've just told them it's happening, not taking any other decisions on board or any other comments on board. And we did this for ourselves. We did this because we wanted to be happy. And regardless of what happens, that baby is coming home with a lot of love and is going to be welcomed with like open arms and, an open heart. And Mahua, a lot of people at that time came to us with questions like, and I would, because I'm a second time adoptee mom, and I would say it came from a place of ignorance. There were some very, very harsh questions like, when you look at your daughter, don't you think she is somebody else's child, that somebody else birthed her? Or what if she doesn't look like you? Or what if she turns out to be like this, this child that comes with a lot of trauma and stress, and which is very difficult for you to handle? And with my daughter, I didn't know how to answer those questions, right? Because I was learning myself. And it's like one fine day after 2 years, somebody just comes and puts a 6-month-old in your hand and says, hey, this is your baby. Now you are her caregiver, you are her person, You are her everything. And for me, at that point of time, I was not only dealing with this, there is postpartum even with a heart mom, and we call ourselves heart moms because we manifest our babies in our hearts and not through our bodies. And I would hold that baby and sit and cry for hours because I didn't have anybody to support me through this journey after the baby came home. People had a lot of questions before the baby came home. Like I said, in our society, we still don't know what we're supposed to say when somebody adopts a baby when they come home. They don't tell you, listen, sit down, let me take the baby from you, go have a cup of tea. Or why don't you go take a drive, go get your groceries and come, I'll watch over your child. Or she's napping, why don't you go take a shower? Nobody does that for you. They don't do it even when you have a biological baby, because they just feel like you are handling everything. But mothers are a mess, whether it's biological, whether it's adopted, whatever it is. When a new baby is in your house and you yourself are reeling with the fact that you suddenly have this baby at home that you have not had enough time to plan for, because Kara doesn't call you up and doesn't tell you, hey, next month on this date your baby is coming home. You get a phone call and you get an SMS and a picture, and in 48 hours you have to make the decision to whether you're bringing this baby home or not. You get 48 hours. And in 48 hours, you have to do all your health checks. You have to go to the pediatrician, take the reports. And it's such a whirlwind. And then before you know it, in a week's time, the baby's home. And as new parents...
It sounds very overwhelming, Sandhya.
It is.
And I mean, because when I was a mother, I think I kind of did not even know how to feed my child as a first time mother, and I had problems with my child suckling on, because there's so many changes that go on in your body. So one can't even kind of begin to fathom how much you've endured and how you purged yourself from all of this today, sitting opposite me with a smile. And you're a warrior, Sandhya. I mean, so much respect, and I'm totally in awe of you. And I think for all our listeners who's going to listen to this, because people in India, I don't think totally, I mean, not India, I don't know what it is across the world, but adoption is the last resort is what people think, and they are always discouraging you from adoption. They will ask you to have your own biological child. And yet in India, there are so many children who need a home. But this whole concept about adoption is still not accepted even now. Do you agree?
Oh, 150%. Because this whole apna khoon and varis and lineage and everything else, and I think it's taken over our lives, and I think it's high time the narrative changes. Because this comes from the deepest place in my heart, that when I held my baby, I didn't care whose baby she was, who had birthed her, whose facial features she has, or whose blood she carries. She was mine, and she was 150%, 200% mine, and ours. She was ours. When she lay between us in the night after I had given her a wash and given her her feed, and just watching her cuddle into my chest, into my arms, and make that purring noise, that she felt safe with us. And I remember the first time I held her. I still have that picture with me in the orphanage, and she had put her she had put her head on my chest, and she just slept. And the ladies in the orphanage were like, wow, like she's so comfortable with you. It's because the babies know that they have finally come home, that this is my mama, this is my amma, and they can feel it inside. And it's I don't know whether it's a miracle or it's not, or it's the universe's way of just conspiring for you. When we take them from the orphanage back home, and when they go and sit in the car, they never turn back and look at the people who cared for them. There is no separation anxiety there. I have not seen it with Rukmini. I have not seen it with my son. They never turn back. And usually that's what a child does, right? When you're separating the child from the person who took care of him or her for so many months, they will cry. They will say, they will want to go back. They don't. They happily come into your arms in the blanket, and they sit in the car and they come home with you. And it's just probably, a higher power somewhere up there that is already telling the child, this is your family now, this is your home, these are your parents, and this is your safe place. When we bring these children home, and this coming from like the a person who is now raising two of these children, these hard babies, they are yours, they are nobody else's, they become yours 100%. So when somebody says, when you look at your child, do you think somebody else birthed them? And I say, I do, and I'm very thankful to that woman who did, that I have these beautiful children with me today, that my body could not make these babies, so somebody else made them for me and very nicely has sent them to me to care for them, because it's nature versus nurture always. Nobody cares about who birthed you. They always care about the person who raised you and what kind of a human being you make out of them and what kind of people you make out of them. And as a mother, you have that opportunity to raise these children and make them really beautiful human beings. And it's very easy to say, you know what, I went through labor and I got, I had like a really difficult labor, and kudos to all those women who birth their children and go through all that pain. But it's also about the raising of those children.
Absolutely. You can say that again and again. It's about the nurturing.
It's about the nurturing, because and I'm sorry to say this, I see a lot of people who birth these children but have no time to give them. These children are now being raised by their grandparents and caregivers, and because these people, for some reason, got pregnant, had children, but are not present in their children's lives. And that's very unfortunate. We see this a lot. It is not in our place to speak about this, because it is each person and each parent to their child, but it does take a village to raise a child. And I'm so thankful that my village is full of such beautiful people who, nurture and care for my children the way they do, and they become mothers and fathers themselves. And I've had people come to me and pretty much hold these babies to their chests and their bodies and say, I'm so happy they're with you today. They've come to the best set of parents, to the best homes. And to me, it just feels like life has come a full circle with this, because we are changing as a couple, as a society. We're changing the way people look at this. We're changing the narrative. We're changing the idea of adoption, and we're trying to tell people that blood is nothing. It's the same. You cut my vein, you cut your vein. It's the same blood. So what are we talking about over here?
So Sandhya, I mean, you can just see that how much you touch my soul when you speak about your journey. And I'm sure for so many listeners right now, who are hesitant about adoption and yet they want to become mothers, yours is a phenomenal journey. People who want to take on IVF and they don't know what is it that they need to endure, because purging themselves from prescriptions, purging themselves from these doctor visits, and then still being unsuccessful isn't an easy one, on anyone. So what is the last message that you'd like to leave behind for our listeners, for young girls who like you? I too love the idea, and I loved being a mother to my son. I was a present mom, with him. And I'm extremely grateful for the time that I spent with him during his growing up years. What would you like to tell young women who may not want to give up their careers today and still want to become mothers? Because, we can't say that just because you're extremely career oriented, you cannot enjoy this phase of being a mother. Would you want to share a message with them too?
Of course, I would. It's something that I have been talking about a lot. I do get these questions very often, is, as a mother, can I have it all? Can I do it all? And my answer to them is, you can't. You can in different phases in your life. So there is a phase in your life where you will have to be present for your children. And then there is a phase in your life where you can take care of your career and you can be this ambitious woman that you want to be. But when you decide to have children, and when you decide to, if you have that kind of financial support at home where you do not need to go to work, where you can be present, because the studies have really shown that the presence of a mother in the first foundation years, the first 5 years of a child's life, makes immense amount of difference in the way they grow up, right? And their brain development. rather than a nanny or a caregiver, any parent for that matter, being present in the house. um, when you talk about people who are very career oriented, who want to achieve that in their lives, I feel like um, you can do it if it is possible for you to work around your career while still being present for your child. It's a very difficult thing, and hats off to the mothers who do it, who do full-time jobs, still come running home to their children, cook a meal. But you will have to, for the initial years, compensate with the amount of time you spend with that child. So if it's weekends and just being present there and reading books to them and doing activities with them and sitting down and coloring and painting with them, just physical touch, right? Just cooking with your kids. Like I bake a lot with my daughter, and I love play-doh and chapati atta, and just being there and being present with her. As a first time mother, I felt like it was very important even to bond with her. You don't want your child to feel that you are neglecting them, because children are very sensitive. They can understand when the parent is not present. They will then compensate and try to look for that elsewhere. And you don't want that to happen. So till the time you can establish that bond and you can connect with your child in a way that any other person cannot, you have to be present. And sometimes your career may take a hit on that. You may have to work at a lower salary. You may have to not probably get the job that you really dream about. Something that is keeping you going. Very important, because mental health is important. Self-care is important. Feeling yourself is important. But not at the expense of not spending time with your children. That I feel is really important. So you can have it all, but at different phases in your life.
Thank you so much for being on today's episode. And it's been wonderful talking to you, Sandhya. Kudos
You're
to the
welcome.
warrior queen. This was Sandhya Vaidyanathan today for us. And I hope all of you have taken a cue from all that she shared with us on today's podcast. Thank you.
Thank you.
To you, our dearest listeners, you can find us on your favorite streaming services, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcast, and of course on all other major streaming services. With loads of love, we are The Mohua Show, where we talk ईमानदारी से.